My dad texted, "Come home, this family needs you," after I was officially disowned for tarnishing our immaculate image. I texted back, "You were the one who laughed the hardest when I walked out of that house." My family is obsessed with appearances. We're talking a whole clan worshiping a 5-star rating. My parents own a massive chain of luxury boutique hotels, the kind where the ultra-wealthy spend a year's worth of rent on a single weekend getaway. To them, hospitality isn't just a business, it's their entire identity. And apparently, I'm the blemish that tarnishes their perfect velvet rug. It's not like I'm some deadbeat playing video games in a basement. Far from it. I own a highly successful business designing and handcrafting bespoke acoustic guitars and violins. I'm not talking about standard instruments you buy at a retail store. These are master-level pieces made from exotic, vintage woods with insane attention to detail. Instruments that cost more than a luxury sedan. My clients are CEOs, Grammy-winning musicians, and elite collectors who want something completely one-of-a-kind. But here's the thing, I keep a pretty low profile. I don't drive flashy sports cars or wear overpriced watches. My workshop isn't in some shiny office park. It's in an old industrial brick warehouse that I bought outright with cash. My team is small. Just a few people I trust completely, and we churn out instruments that have a 6-month waiting list. My family knows none of this. To them, I'm just the guy who chose a dusty hobby over the family empire. Growing up, my parents made it clear what they valued most: money, prestige, and keeping up appearances. My older brother, Julian, was the firstborn golden child, groomed to take over the hotel empire. Clara, my sister, was their pride and joy because she married into massive political wealth. And then there was Chloe, the baby sister who could do no wrong, coasting through life on the family dime while spending her days lounging at our top-tier spa resorts. I was doomed from the start. I didn't want what they wanted. They loved the limelight, the constant need to network, and the pressure to maintain this image of a perfect dynasty. I hated it. When I was a kid, I'd sneak away from their stupid charity dinners to tinker with anything I could get my hands on: broken radios, old clocks, and scraps of timber. That's how I found my passion. I poured everything into my craft after college, which they only paid for because they thought I'd eventually come to my senses. They think I'm barely scraping by because I wear simple flannels and drive an old truck. The truth? My business has hit 7 figures. I have global partnerships, and I'm doing better financially than all of them combined. Every visit was the same routine. Julian bragged about corporate partnerships Dad set up for him, Clara dropped hints about her elite social circles, and Chloe acted like a spoiled princess. I just got polite fake smiles and passive-aggressive digs. "Still playing with wood, Leo?" Dad would ask with pure disappointment. One time, Clara straight up offered to find me a real job at a hotel front desk. I just laughed. They were so wrapped up in their own world that they couldn't see what was right in front of them. But they couldn't just let me live my life. Julian cornered me at one of my mom's dinners, lecturing me on loyalty. He actually said, "You're either with us or against us." I almost choked on my whiskey. And then, there it was, a short, sharp text from my dad. "Family meeting, 8 p.m., be there." I showed up to the family meeting prepared for a lecture or perhaps an argument. I wasn't prepared for the staged circus that awaited me. The moment I walked into the house, the tension was thick enough to cut. It was like stepping onto Broadway's stage where the script had already been written and I was the only one who hadn't read it. My dad opened the heavy oak door and gave me a cold, once-over glance, as if my presence alone were a nuisance. He didn't even say hello. Instead, he muttered, "You're exactly on time, for once," and stepped aside to let me in. The house looked exactly as it always had, pristine, expensive, and completely devoid of soul. Every piece of decor screamed about how much money they had, from the oversized crystal chandelier in the foyer to the perfectly staged formal living room that no one actually used. It was a giant gilded stage. They were all gathered in a perfect semicircle like they were about to hold a press conference. Julian was sitting on the edge of a velvet armchair, dressed in his usual business formal uniform, looking like he'd just come from a board meeting. Clara was perched next to him, scrolling through her phone, probably pretending to manage some high-stakes guest list. Chloe was sprawled out in a wingback chair, looking bored, though I knew her well enough to spot the flicker of anticipation in her eyes. Then there was my mother, sitting slightly off to the side, wringing her hands and giving me that tight, nervous smile she always used when things were about to get uncomfortable. And, of course, there was my chair, a single lonely seat placed strategically in the center of the room, facing them all. It was so transparently an ambush that I almost laughed out loud. Dad didn't waste any time. As soon as I sat down, he launched into a rehearsed speech about the importance of family unity and the sanctity of the family legacy. It was all very official, very condescending. Julian chimed in with buzzwords like long-term strategy and brand optics, which made me roll my eyes so hard it physically hurt. Clara wasn't far behind, throwing in comments about my career choices were problematic and reflected poorly on the family's social standing. She kept using words like reputation and prestige, as if those were the only things that kept the world spinning. Chloe didn't say much, but she didn't have to. She just sat there smirking, treating the whole thing like a reality show. I didn't say a word. I just let them talk, nodding occasionally to lead them to believe I was actually listening. It was fascinating in a sick way to see how much effort they had put into this. They really thought they were staging an intervention to save me from a life of failure. Eventually, Clara stood up and handed me a thick manila folder. She slid it across the coffee table with a look of practiced disdain. "This is for the good of the family," she said, her voice dripping with artificial grace. I opened a folder. I didn't need a lawyer to understand the gist of it. It was a formal disinheritance agreement, accompanied by a contract stripping me of any association with the family name or their hotel chain. They wanted me erased. For a second, I just stared at the papers, not because I was shocked, as I'd seen this coming for months, but because it was hilarious how seriously they were taking this. They truly believed this was a punishment. Dad leaned forward, his face hard. "This isn't personal, Leo. It's strictly business. Your choices have consequences." I raised an eyebrow. "My choices?" "You've chosen a path that doesn't align with our values," Julian recited his script. Clara nodded. "It's about all of us, Leo. We have to protect the image of this family." I wanted to laugh, but I remained stone-faced. I flipped through the pages, pretending to study to legalese. Finally, I looked up, locked eyes with my father, and said, "Where do I sign?" The room went deathly silent. The look of utter confusion on their faces was worth the price of admission. My mother was the first to break the silence. "Leo, wait, don't you think you should talk this through?" "Nope," I said, cutting her off. "This is exactly what you want, right? To cut me loose? Let's get over it." Clara blinked, clearly thrown off. "It's not about cutting you loose. It's about setting boundaries." "Boundaries," I repeated with a smirk. "Sure, let's call it that." Dad gestured to the bottom of the page. "Just sign there." I grabbed the pen, scribbled my name at the bottom, and slid the folder back to Clara. She looked like she didn't know whether to be relieved or deeply offended that I hadn't fought back. "Is that all?" I asked, standing up. Dad frowned, looking visibly annoyed. "This isn't a joke, Leo. One day you'll understand that this was necessary." I nodded, already walking toward the door. "Yeah, I'll be sure to send you a thank you card when that day comes." As I walked out, I could feel their eyes on my back, but I didn't look back. They thought they had just made a statement. They had no idea they'd just opened the door to their own ruin. When I got back to my workshop that night, I didn't feel upset or defeated. Honestly, I felt relieved. That family meeting was just confirmation of something I'd known for years. I wasn't one of them. They had no idea who I was or what I'd built, and they weren't interested in finding out. I flicked on the lights, and the hum of the bulbs was more comforting than anything I'd felt sitting in that over-decorated mansion. The space was my sanctuary. Walls lined with specialized hand tools, shelves stacked with custom bridges and tuners, and rows of raw, exotic tone woods waiting for me to bring them to life. It was all mine, built with my own two hands. My partner, Marcus, was still there, sorting through a fresh shipment of premium alpine spruce. He looked up as I walked in. "Hey, how did it go?" "They disowned me," I said, casually dropping my bag on the workbench. Marcus blinked. "Wait, like officially?" "Yep," I said, inspecting the grain on a half-finished acoustic body. "They signed the papers and everything. I'm no longer part of the dynasty." He let out a low whistle. "Tam, you okay?" I shrugged. "Honestly, yeah. They think they cut me off, but they did me a favor." We worked in silence for a while, the only sound being the steady, therapeutic scrape of my chisel against cedar. It was peaceful. A couple of hours later, I logged into our business dashboard, and the numbers were enough to make me smile. Orders were through the roof. One of our recent bespoke builds had gone viral on a niche musicians forum, and people were practically throwing money at us. Our inbox was flooded with custom requests, bulk orders from international distributors, and high-profile inquiries. One email was a prominent lifestyle journalist wanting to do a full feature on our workshop. Another was a private collector offering an absurd six-figure sum for a one-of-a-kind violin. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. My family thought I was wasting my life playing with wood, but this hobby was pulling in more clean profit than their luxury hotels. The money was a great bonus, but the best part was that it gave me total autonomy. I didn't have to answer to investors, shareholders, or my toxic family. The next morning, I met my partner at our favorite diner. "All right," he said, sliding into the booth across from me and opening his laptop. "What's the plan?" "For what?" I asked, sipping my black coffee. "For dealing with your family," he said. "They're going to come crawling back eventually. You know that, right?" I shrugged. "Let 'em. I'm not going to waste my energy. I've got bigger things to focus on." Marcus smirked. "Fair enough. Speaking of bigger things, our supplier is offering an exclusive deal on rare old-growth Brazilian rosewood, but we have to commit to a massive production run. Can we handle it?" "Easily. With our current waiting list, we can double our output and still have room to breathe." "Do it."
As the weeks went by, things only got better. The Lifestyle magazine feature came out, and it was an absolute game changer. The journalist wrote a glowing profile about how I'd transformed an obsession with acoustics and wood into a thriving elite brand, complete with stunning photos of our rustic workshop and our sleekest guitar designs. The response was insane. Orders tripled overnight. We had to hire 2 more master craftsmen just to keep up with the sudden influx. Marcus handled their training while I locked myself in the back room, focusing entirely on designing our next major project. Then came the partnership that truly put us on the map. A prestigious global orchestra wanted to collaborate on a limited edition series of concert violins. Marcus and I spent weeks hammering out the details, pulling late nights to ensure every single spec was flawless. When the prototypes were finally finished, they were perfection. The launch was a massive success. The entire line sold out within hours, and the buzz cemented our status. Suddenly, we weren't just a boutique workshop anymore. We were a globally recognized brand. Through all of this, my family remained completely silent. Not a call, not a text. I didn't know if they were intentionally ignoring me or if they were just totally oblivious to my world. Either way, it didn't matter. But their silence didn't last. It started with a text from Clara. She broke the ice first, as I figured she would. My siblings were predictable like that. She always liked playing the role of the mature peacemaker when things got messy, mostly so everyone would see her as the voice of reason. "We need to talk. Urgent family matters." I ignored it. Then came a text from Julian. "Leo, let's meet up. I think there's been a misunderstanding." I actually laughed out loud at that one. A misunderstanding. The same guy who sat there with perfect corporate posture watching me sign away my inheritance now thought we had a little miscommunication. I didn't reply to him either. The texts kept rolling in over the next few days, each one carrying a heavier scent of desperation. Chloe finally reached out too, though her message was just as lazy as her lifestyle. "Yo, you around? Stuff's happening." Real poetic. But the text that actually made me pause was from my dad. "Come home. We need you." That was when I knew the tectonic plates had shifted. Dad didn't ask for things. He commanded. He expected. He demanded. Come home was as close to begging as his pride would ever allow him to get. A week later, Marcus and I were in the workshop when my phone rang from an unknown number. I picked up. "Hello, Leo," a familiar, stiff voice said. It was Julian, trying way too hard to sound formal. "We need to talk." I rolled my eyes, leaning against a workbench. "I got your texts, Julian. What do you want?" He hesitated for a second, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. "It's about the family business. We're facing some challenges." I could practically hear the physical pain it caused him to admit that word. "You're facing challenges?" I smirked, tapping a piece of spruce. "That's interesting. Last time we talked in that living room, I was a liability to the brand. My choices didn't align with your corporate values. Remember?" "Leo, come on," Julian said. His tone instantly shifted into that condescending older brother voice he loved so much. Let's not dwell on the past. This is bigger than all of us. I laughed. No, it's not. It's about you, Clara, and Dad realizing you have absolutely no idea how to adapt to a world that moves faster than your old money playbook. I'm busy, Julian. If the hotels are drowning, you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't good enough to carry the family name. I hung up before he could even attempt a rebuttal. It felt incredibly satisfying.
A week later, Clara showed up at my workshop unannounced. I was fine-tuning an acoustic build when her luxury sedan pulled into the lot. She stepped out in designer heels, looking completely ridiculous, navigating a space where sawdust and wood shavings were the main decor. She slipped past me, glancing around with clear condescension. "So, this is what you've been doing? Guitars?" "Yep," I said, crossing my arms. "Look, things are bad," she sighed. "The hospitality market shifted, bookings are plummeting, and Dad isn't handling it well. Julian is trying to hold things together, but we need you, Leo." Those words hit differently. For years, I was the one who didn't measure up, and now they needed me? What exactly do you think I can do? "You've always had creative instincts," she said smoothly, "and you've clearly been doing okay for yourself here." "Okay?" I raised an eyebrow. She flinched. "We're in deep trouble, Leo. We didn't adapt fast enough. Julian and I think you could bring something new to the table." "You want me to come back and fix the business after everything you guys pulled?" "Yeah, no, I'm good." Clara's facade cracked. "Leo, please, it's about the legacy." "Your legacy," I corrected, "not mine." I opened the door. "Have a nice day, Clara." A week later, Dad himself showed up, looking entirely exhausted. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. I leaned against the doorframe. "Do we, though?" He sighed. "Leo, I'll admit it. We were wrong about you. The business is failing. I can't fix it. Julian can't either. We need your help." I stared at him, letting the weight of his words sink in. The man who had always preached about pride was practically begging. "I'll think about it," I said, stepping aside. The tables had completely turned. I let him stew for a few days. No calls, no texts. Marcus thought the whole thing was hilarious. "So, they need you to save them, but they haven't actually apologized." "Pretty much," I said, smirking. "And you're just letting them twist in the wind?" I shrugged. "Feels fair." A few days later, Clara called again. "I've given it thought," I told her, "and I have conditions. I want full control. You'll all stay on as regular employees. No titles, no power. You answered to me." Clara practically choked. "Full control? Leo, that's non-negotiable." "If you don't like it, find someone else to fix your mess," I said, staying firm. The next day, Dad returned, pure desperation in his eyes. "Clara told me about your conditions. It's a massive ask, Leo. You're asking us to hand over the empire your mother and I built." "No," I countered. "I'm asking you to hand over a company that's actively dying because none of you know how to evolve. If you want me to save it, I run it my way." He stood in silence, the internal struggle clear on his face. Finally, he nodded. "Fine. You have full control, but keep the family name attached to the brand." "Deal," I said. The real fun began after they begrudgingly signed over full control. I didn't waste any time. This wasn't a democracy, it was a dictatorship, and I held the reins. First, I dismantled their precious hierarchy. I called a staff meeting at headquarters. My family sat off to the side like kids waiting for the principal to yell at them. "The old way of doing things is dead," I announced to the managers. "From now on, this company runs on results, not nepotism." I demoted Julian from COO to front desk lobby manager. He needed to actually see how guests were treated. I cut Clara's bloated event budgets, and Chloe, I stripped her of her resort spa privileges and put her on the night shift reception desk. She wept, but she showed up. Next, I overhauled the properties. Half of our hotels were bleeding cash because they were stuck in the past, gaudy, over-decorated, and soulless. I closed the worst performers and hired architects to redesign the rest into sleek, minimalist sanctuaries, utilizing sustainable, raw tonwoods and timeless craftsmanship. I also trashed their 2005-era website and launched a modern, fluid booking platform. Within weeks, reservations skyrocketed. Julian tried to undermine me in private, asking if I could handle this level of corporate management. I just smiled. "You're welcome to resign if the pace is too fast for you." That shut him up. The ultimate turning point came at the International Hospitality Expo. I designed our exhibition booth myself, creating an immersive, wood-crafted architectural experience that perfectly represented our new direction. Industry leaders and journalists flocked to us, praising our radical, authentic transformation. I was the center of attention. My family was just background noise. A few weeks later, during a quarterly review, I presented the highest profit margins the company had ever seen. As I closed my laptop, Dad cleared his throat. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "Leo, I just want to say I'm proud of you. You didn't just save this business, you made it better." Clara nodded. "Dad's right. We should have seen your potential sooner." Even Julian muttered a reluctant agreement. "We've been talking," Dad continued, looking at the others. "We'd like to fix things. Not just the business, but us, the family." There it was, the olive branch. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence hang. "I appreciate the sentiment," I said, keeping my tone perfectly neutral. "But let's be honest, you didn't want me in this family until I became useful to you. That's something I'm not going to forget." Clara looked down. Julian frowned. "Julian, come on. We made mistakes, but we're trying to make it right." "You're trying to make it right because your luxury lifestyle depended on it," I said calmly, gathering my notes. "If these hotels had gone bankrupt, you wouldn't be sitting here offering apologies. Let's not rewrite history." I stood up. "Here's the deal. I'll keep running the company and you'll keep doing your jobs. But outside of this office, we are done. No more forcing fake smiles at Thanksgiving. We tried being a family, and you signed the papers to end it. We're business partners now. That's it." The room was dead silent as I walked out. I didn't feel angry or bitter. I just knew exactly where my boundaries were, and I wasn't ever going to let them cross them again.